You won't believe this. One of the world's most powerful luxury empires didn't start with red carpets, celebrity endorsements, or billion-dollar investors. It began in a tiny shop hidden in the streets of Milan, selling leather trunks and travel bags to a handful of travelers. No one saw it coming, but that modest store would one day become Prada, a name that now stands for billions, sophistication, and quiet power. The truth revealed is that behind the glamour you see today lies a story of doubt, near failures, and shocking reinventions. What really happened wasn't a straight line to success. It was a series of bold choices, hidden lessons, and moments where it almost didn't work. And if you think Prada's rise was just about fashion, you're in for a surprise, because this changed everything. Before we dive in, I've put together an exclusive guide with 10 lessons from the world's most iconic empires. It's designed to complement this story and show you exactly how to apply these principles in your own life or business. You'll find the link in the description. Now, let's step back in time to 1913, where two brothers with nothing but a vision stitched the first threads of what would become an empire worth billions. Topic 1. Humble beginnings. In the year 1913, Milan was buzzing with culture, ambition, and a hunger for modernity. Amidst this whirlwind, two brothers, Maurizio and Martino Prada, opened a modest leather goods shop tucked away on Galleria Vittorio Emanuele II. They weren't aiming to conquer the world, at least not yet. Their focus was simple: travel bags, steamer trunks, and fine imported goods for Italy's growing elite. You won't believe this, but in a city already dominated by luxury giants, these two outsiders dared to dream of carving out their own space. Every stitch, every seam, every polished buckle carried their vision of excellence. But make no mistake, it wasn't easy. Competing against well-established fashion houses felt like swimming against a tide that never stopped pulling. Customers were skeptical, suppliers favored the big names, and Milan's luxury scene had little room for newcomers. No one saw it coming, but the little shop's survival depended not just on quality, but on a reputation that could withstand time. Before we dive deeper, I've put together an exclusive guide with 10 lessons from the world's most powerful empires. You'll find the link in the description. It complements this story, showing how tiny beginnings often hide the seeds of billion-dollar futures. Now, let's get back to the Prada brothers, whose persistence was about to set the foundation for something no one could imagine. Maurizio believed that luxury wasn't about chasing trends. It was about creating objects that would outlive fashion itself. That belief shaped the DNA of Prada. Even when sales were modest, the brothers refused shortcuts. They avoided mass production, choosing craftsmanship instead. The hidden lesson here? Building a reputation takes time, consistency, and an obsession with details no one else sees. Imagine being a young entrepreneur today, launching a business in a crowded market filled with corporate giants. That was the reality for Maurizio and Martino. The fear of being forgotten, of closing their doors after just a few years, haunted them. Yet their resilience proved that even when it almost didn't work, there's power in holding on to your values when everyone else is cutting corners. What really happened in those early years wasn't glamorous. There were no instant riches, no viral moments, no easy money. Just long days, slow growth, and countless doubts. But that's exactly what makes their story so powerful. Because what no one tells you is that empires don't usually start with fireworks. They start in silence, with persistence, until one day, the world finally notices. Topic 2. Family influence and early vision. Behind the counters of their small Milanese shop, the Prada brothers weren't just selling bags, they were building a philosophy. Maurizio and Martino believed that every product carried a piece of themselves. In their eyes, craftsmanship was sacred, something that could never be replaced by speed or mass production. The truth revealed is that this mindset, though slow and costly, created a standard of excellence that silently set them apart from competitors. Family values played an even bigger role. Unlike many brands driven purely by profit, the Prada saw their work as an extension of who they were: respect for tradition, discipline in the details, and a refusal to cut corners. These weren't marketing slogans, they were family codes. No one saw it coming, but these values would one day shape an empire that taught the fashion world to slow down and look closer. Their partnership was a balance of strengths. Maurizio was the visionary, dreaming of influence beyond Milan, while Martino was the steady hand, focused on execution. Together, they found harmony in tension. It almost didn't work, of course. They fought, they disagreed, and at times, the shop felt too small for two strong-willed men. But it's in those clashes that Prada's DNA of resilience and innovation was forged. Think about it. How often do we rush to replicate what's already working for others instead of holding on to what makes us unique? The hidden lesson here is that consistency, rooted in values, can outlast any trend. What really happened inside that tiny store was less about selling bags and more about teaching the world that patience, integrity, and quality eventually pay off. This is where I need to pause for a second. If you've ever struggled to stay consistent or questioned whether your values matter in a cutthroat world, I created that exclusive guide I mentioned earlier for you. It breaks down how great empires, from fashion to tech, used patience and vision to outlast their rivals. Check the link in the description and you'll see exactly how these lessons apply beyond just fashion. The Prada brothers couldn't have known it then, but their insistence on quality over quantity would ripple through generations. From leather trunks to global fashion runways, the DNA they planted became unshakable. And the truth is, without this foundation, Prada might have remained just another forgotten shop in Milan, instead of the timeless symbol it is today. Topic 03. Passing the torch. When Maurizio Prada looked ahead, no one saw it coming. His successor wasn't a son, as tradition dictated, but his daughter, Luisa. In a time when women were rarely entrusted with the future of a business, this was a shocking story. And yet, it was Luisa who would take the reins, proving that the destiny of Prada was never meant to follow the ordinary path. What really happened here is a reminder that leadership often shows up in unexpected forms. Luisa Prada stepped into the role quietly, without fanfare, but with a determination that matched her father's. For nearly 2 decades, she guided the company through a changing world. Fashion was evolving, consumer tastes were shifting, and the luxury industry was becoming more competitive than ever. Still, she held on, carrying the family's values and protecting the essence of the brand. It could have ended here, but Luisa refused to let the legacy fade. The truth revealed in her tenure is simple: leadership isn't about titles or appearances, it's about endurance. Luisa may not have been the face the world expected, but she became the steward Prada needed. She weathered storms, kept the business alive, and set the stage for the next chapter, though few realized it at the time. No one saw it coming, but her decision to stay the course laid the groundwork for the empire we know today. This hidden lesson is powerful. Sometimes the one least expected to lead is the one who carries the vision forward. It's a warning against underestimating quiet strength. How often in our own lives do we dismiss someone, or even ourselves, because they don't fit the mold of what leadership should look like? Luisa's story proves that the secret behind it all isn't perception, but persistence. And if you're wondering how to apply this lesson in your own journey, that's exactly the kind of insight I unpack inside the exclusive guide linked below. Because whether you're building a business, a career, or even just a personal project, understanding how unexpected leadership shifts can redefine destiny might be the key to your breakthrough. By the time Luisa stepped aside in 1978, few could predict what would come next. Her daughter Miuccia was waiting in the wings. At first underestimated, her arrival would change everything. But before that transformation began, it's worth pausing to honor Luisa, the woman who kept the flame alive long enough for the world to finally take notice. Topic 4. The Miuccia Prada era. 1978. The Prada story took a turn no one saw coming. After Luisa stepped down, her daughter, Miuccia Prada, inherited the business. At first, the fashion world barely noticed. She wasn't a seasoned executive, nor a glamorous designer with a famous name. She was quiet, intellectual, even a little eccentric. Many doubted she had what it took to lead a struggling family brand in an industry that was becoming more ruthless every year. But here's the shocking story. The very things that made people underestimate Miuccia became her greatest strengths. She wasn't interested in following the rules. She wanted to bend them, break them, reinvent them. She studied political science, mime, and art before fashion ever entered the picture. The truth revealed is that this eclectic background gave her a perspective no traditional designer could match. Miuccia's experiments with materials were the first signs of her vision. She dared to take a fabric considered cheap and unglamorous, black nylon, and turn it into a luxury statement. What really happened is that her innovation clashed with tradition, but her determination won. That fabric would soon become the core of Prada's identity, a rebellious symbol that luxury could be redefined. It almost didn't work, but when it did, it changed everything. Think about it. How often do we dismiss ideas because they seem too odd, too impractical, or too different from how it's always been done? Miuccia's story is a hidden lesson. In trusting instincts others mock, sometimes the very thing people laugh at is the secret behind it all, the spark that ignites a revolution. Learn from this mistake. Don't let others define what your creativity is worth. And if this resonates with you, the exclusive guide in the description dives deeper into this kind of reinvention. It shows how industry leaders in fashion, business, and beyond transformed failure, doubt, and even ridicule into billion-dollar opportunities. Because what no one tells you is that reinvention isn't just for empires, it's for anyone ready to think differently. By the end of the 1980s, Miuccia was no longer underestimated. She had turned Prada into a force the world couldn't ignore. The once modest shop in Milan was becoming the epicenter of a new vision for luxury. But the real breakthrough was still to come, a single product launch that would disrupt the entire fashion industry. Topic 5. Reinvention and breakthrough. In the mid-1980s, Miuccia Prada unveiled something that seemed almost laughably simple, a nylon backpack. At first glance, it was nothing extraordinary. No exotic leather, no gold accents, no elaborate design, just black nylon, sleek lines, and subtle elegance. But you won't believe this, that backpack sparked a revolution in luxury fashion. No one saw it coming, but a cheap material transformed into a billion-dollar statement. The shocking story is how quickly it caught fire. Young professionals, fashion elites, even celebrities wanted it. It was functional, lightweight, and yet it carried an air of sophistication that no one could resist. What really happened is that Miuccia tapped into a hidden desire. People wanted luxury that wasn't flashy, but smart. And this changed everything. Prada was no longer just competing, it was leading. Imagine this, a bag once dismissed as too plain was suddenly the must-have item across the globe. The secret behind it was more than just design, it was timing. In an era obsessed with excess, Prada's minimalism felt radical. The hidden lesson, sometimes the least glamorous idea, holds the power to disrupt entire industries. Learn from this mistake. Don't overlook the simple solution just because it doesn't sparkle at first glance. For entrepreneurs, this moment is a reminder that breakthroughs often hide in plain sight. Think about how many opportunities are missed because they don't look big enough. Prada's nylon backpack proved that simplicity, when executed with vision, can rewrite the rules of the game. It could have ended here as a one-hit wonder, but instead, it became the blueprint for Prada's rise as a global powerhouse. This is the kind of turning point I break down in the exclusive guide I mentioned earlier. In it, you'll see how brands, from fashion to tech, used overlooked ideas to dominate their markets. Because what no one tells you is that revolutions often begin with the smallest, quietest products. Check the link in the description if you want to dive deeper. By the end of the decade, Prada wasn't just another luxury house. It was the name on everyone's lips, a symbol of intelligence, rebellion, and modernity. The backpack had opened doors to something greater, a global expansion that would soon place Prada alongside the likes of Gucci and Louis Vuitton. Topic 6. Global expansion success of the nylon backpack unlocked doors Prada had only dreamed of. Suddenly, Miuccia and her team were no longer confined to Milan. Flagship stores began popping up in fashion capitals: New York, Paris, London, Tokyo. Each opening wasn't just a retail move, it was a declaration. Prada had arrived on the world stage. You won't believe this, but within just a few years, a tiny family store had transformed into a global empire. What really happened was more than just expansion, it was strategic domination. Miuccia positioned Prada not as flashy or gaudy, but as the intellectual's luxury. Minimalism, clean lines, and understated power became the new symbols of wealth. No one saw it coming, but Prada redefined what luxury could look like, moving away from excess and toward quiet sophistication. This changed everything in the fashion hierarchy. Walking into a Prada store felt different. The architecture was modern, the atmosphere deliberate. These weren't just shops, they were temples of design, reflecting the brand's philosophy. The hidden lesson here is simple: you don't just sell a product, you sell an experience. Learn from this mistake. Too many brands focus on what they're selling and forget how they're making people feel. Prada never made that error. By the early 1990s, Prada had earned its place beside Gucci and Louis Vuitton, but with its own identity. It wasn't competing by imitation, it was competing by creating a category of its own. Minimalism wasn't just a design choice, it was a lifestyle. For the ambitious and the elite, carrying Prada meant being part of something smarter, sharper, and more modern. And if you're building something of your own, this lesson applies directly. Expanding isn't just about growth, it's about defining your identity before the world defines it for you. That's one of the principles I detail in the exclusive guide linked below, where I break down how global empires keep their DNA intact while scaling worldwide. What no one tells you is that expansion without identity is the fastest way to disappear. By the mid-1990s, Prada was no longer chasing trends, it was setting them. From Milan to Manhattan, the brand had become synonymous with minimalism and elegance, but with rapid growth came new pressures, new rivals, and new risks. And behind the scenes, cracks were beginning to show. Topic 7. Challenges and competition. Been the polished storefronts and runway glamour. The 1990s brought storms few outsiders knew about. Prada was expanding at lightning speed, but that growth came with a price: soaring debts, risky investments, and immense pressure to perform. You won't believe this, but there were moments when the empire almost collapsed under its own weight. What really happened was a high-wire act, balancing brilliance with near-disaster. Competition was ruthless. Gucci was reinventing itself. Under Tom Ford, Louis Vuitton was dominating the luxury luggage market, and new players were rising fast. No one saw it coming, but Prada, the quiet minimalist, suddenly found itself in a loud battle for cultural relevance. The shocking story is that even billion-dollar empires can feel fragile, clinging to survival while projecting an image of untouchable strength. The truth revealed is that Prada's greatest enemy wasn't always its rivals, it was the risk of losing its own identity. With pressure to adapt, expand, and please shareholders, the temptation to dilute the brand loomed large. This hidden lesson applies to anyone chasing growth. If you compromise too much on what makes you unique, you can win in the short term and lose in the long run. Think of it like this: how many businesses, influencers, or startups do you see rise quickly only to fade just as fast? It almost didn't work for Prada either. The secret behind its survival wasn't perfection, but resilience. Instead of abandoning its DNA, Prada doubled down on minimalism, even when the world demanded more sparkle, more noise, more everything. That's exactly why I included a section in the exclusive guide about brand identity under pressure. It shows how companies across industries held their ground when survival seemed impossible. What no one tells you is that holding on to your DNA, even when it feels risky, can be the difference between collapse and legacy. By the late 1990s, Prada had navigated its darkest hours. Still standing, still defiant, it proved that authenticity could outlast turbulence, but survival wasn't enough. The next chapter would show how Prada turned survival into dominance, expanding its empire into new categories and cementing its place as a cultural icon. Topic 8. Modern Prada and billions. Empires. Prada stepped into the new millennium. The brand wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. One of the boldest moves was the creation of Miu Miu, a sub-brand that carried Miucci's nickname. Where Prada was intellectual and refined, Miu Miu was playful, experimental, and rebellious. No one saw it coming, but this younger sister brand captured a whole new audience, proving that Prada wasn't afraid to reinvent itself again. And again, the empire grew beyond bags and clothing. Eyewear, perfumes, shoes, and accessories turned Prada into more than a fashion label. It became a lifestyle. You won't believe this, but what started as a family shop selling trunks now dominated catwalks from Milan to Paris, with celebrities and royalty alike showcasing the brand. The truth revealed: diversification, when done with purpose, multiplies influence without diluting identity. Every runway show became a global event. Journalists, buyers, and fashion insiders eagerly waited to see what Miuccia would unveil next. The shocking story wasn't just the designs, it was how Prada managed to stay relevant in an industry obsessed with the next big thing. What really happened was a careful balance: innovation on one hand, consistency on the other. The hidden lesson here: don't trap yourself in a single box. Whether you're an entrepreneur or a creative, expansion can be the fuel for longevity. If you stay true to your DNA, learn from this mistake. Those who refuse to adapt often vanish, while those who over-adapt lose themselves. Prada walked the tightrope and emerged stronger. This is why, in the exclusive guide I created, there's a section on strategic diversification. It breaks down how global empires knew exactly when to branch out and when to hold back, because what no one tells you is that expansion isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things at the right time. Today, Prada is worth billions. It commands respect not just as a luxury fashion house, but as a cultural force that shaped how the world views style, sophistication, and even identity itself. But beyond the billions, its foundation still whispers the same truth. Everything began with two brothers in a tiny Milanese shop, daring to dream bigger than anyone thought possible. Topic 9. Legacy and impact. Truth revealed is that Prada's legacy isn't just about luxury, it's about reinvention, resilience, and the courage to defy expectations. From Mario and Martino's tiny leather shop to Miucci's bold reimagining of what fashion could be, Prada became more than a brand. It became a statement. What really happened behind the scenes was decades of risk-taking, persistence, and decisions that almost didn't work, but changed everything. You won't believe this, but Prada's impact stretched far beyond fashion. Its minimalist philosophy influenced architecture, design, even the way people thought about status. Carrying a Prada bag wasn't about showing off, it was about signaling intelligence, taste, and quiet power. No one saw it coming, but the ripple effect of Prada reshaped culture itself. The shocking story is that this empire, now worth billions, still rests on the DNA of craftsmanship and values planted over a century ago. The hidden lesson: greatness isn't built overnight. It's forged in silence, in persistence, in the decisions no one applauds at the time. Learn from this mistake. Don't expect recognition before the work is done. Recognition comes later, sometimes much later. For anyone building something today, Prada's journey is a reminder that the hardest years often carry the seeds of the greatest success. What no one tells you is that the path will feel uncertain, messy, and even invisible to others. But if you hold on, if you keep reinventing, you might just create something that outlives you. It could have ended here many times, but it didn't, and that's why Prada stands as a legend. This is why I put together that exclusive guide I've been mentioning throughout this story. It distills the very principles that transformed small family ventures into global empires. If Prada's rise struck a chord with you, that guide will give you the practical steps to apply these hidden lessons in your own journey. The link is in the description, and maybe the most powerful part of this legacy is what comes next. Because Prada's story isn't finished. It's still being written, season after season, risk after risk. The question is, what hidden lesson will you take from it, and how will you use it to shape your own empire? And there it is, the shocking story of how a tiny leather shop in Milan grew into one of the most powerful luxury empires in the world. Prada's journey wasn't about luck or shortcuts. The truth revealed is that it was about patience, reinvention, and the courage to stand apart when the world demanded conformity. What really happened behind the glamour were years of struggle, risks that almost failed, and decisions that changed everything. But here's the hidden lesson. This isn't just Prada's story, it could be yours. How many times have you felt overlooked, underestimated, or pressured to follow the crowd? Learn from this mistake. Greatness isn't built by copying others. It's built by doubling down on your DNA, your values, even when it almost doesn't work. So let me ask you, what empire are you building? And are you ready to protect its identity when challenges come? No one saw it coming for Prada, but that's exactly why its story matters. Because what no one tells you is that the quiet moments, the small decisions, the risks you take today could define your legacy tomorrow. If this story inspired you, I invite you to go deeper with the exclusive guide I created. It's in the description, and it's packed with the very strategies that turn small ventures into global empires. Think of it as your next step, the blueprint to start shaping your own success story. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We share stories like this every week, uncovering the truth behind the world's most legendary businesses. Who knows, the next hidden lesson could be the one that changes everything for you.